Hi, this time I wanted to talk about how the film The Northman is a great source of inspiration for pseudo-historical, low magic role-playing games and role-playing game settings. It's been a while since I've seen a movie or any sort of media that truly does justice to the Norse people of old, the tribes, because in current times there is a tendency to either glorify those sorts of ancient peoples and not just related to what would you say, the Nordic tribes. It's also related to many other types of tribes in the world. They either glorify them or they insult them, they make them look really bad. And the truth is that you do not have a perfect sort of people. All of the different ancient tribes in the world have their, well, in general, there are some tribes that are completely evil, but I would call them like um, tribes of a particular ethnic group. That is, you have tribes of different ethnic groups. Some of them are pretty nasty, but some others are pretty decent, and some others have a mix of good and bad. You could say that it depends on the context, on the period, the historical reality, but history has been manipulated by people with political agendas. So, like I said, many different groups and tribes, they have been portrayed either in a terrible or in a perfect way or in a really good way, depending on the agenda. And this is because those that control the past of people, they can control the present and the future, because oftentimes people look to the past in search of guidance. They try to rediscover their roots, or even if they are not particularly related by blood to different tribes, there is still wisdom in a more natural sort of existence. And like I said, of course, they were not perfect, but there are some kernels, some pearls of truth, of value, that sadly have been distorted by people that say that, oh, this particular group of people or tribe or civilization or whatever, it depends, they were perfect, they didn't do anything wrong, but they usually create this sort of religion around them, and that's why they try to paint them in an overtly um, dishonestly positive way, because in that manner they can take many weak-minded individuals that feel worthless, and so they think, oh, I am the descendant of this noble tribe and we were perfect, we did nothing wrong, and they start to feel some sort of value to them. It's somewhat similar to virtue signaling, when you have people that are terrible individuals, worthless, and so they preach or parrot what is being communicated in current times through the media, the mainstream, something good, so that people think that they are good, but they are just doing that to gain some like social points. So in a similar way, this happens with those ancient peoples. Their image, their true nature, has been distorted to glorify them in those cult or religion related cases, or in the case of someone who is very angry or hateful towards the descendants of a particular group, they start to stain their name, saying that they were all evil and they were horrible. But we have, just like in today, in different societies, we have criminals, the government, lowlifes. They are the worst of society, but we also have decent people. So you cannot say that they were all bad. At least not in most cases. That's my take on things. So the Northman paints a very clear vision or picture of what things were back then, with all the good and bad things of the Nordic tribes. I'm going to talk in a somewhat ambiguous way to avoid spoilers, but I am going to to be more specific when it comes to how it relates to pseudo-historical low magic settings in role-playing games. Okay, let's talk about the story of the Northman. The story centers on this very young boy. Well, he's not that young. He looks like a young teenager. He's what would be considered a prince. His nobility when it comes to his Nordic tribe. His father returns, and I am just telling you things that are shown in the trailer. The link to the trailer will be in the description. His father returns from many battles, and it looks like the perfect life according to that point in time. You do see the negative things about that society with the slaves, and well, you could question several things, but in general, I think they are quite honest and honorable for the most part. They are not pretending to be something they are not. And everything seems fine. The boy has his father and his mother, and he's being like initiated into the traditions of his tribe and becoming a man. But then his father is betrayed. His father gets killed. He shouts, he yells, he tells his son to run because he needs to survive to continue that heroic bloodline. And pretty much the entire village, or rather those that are faithful or loyal to the boy's father, they are massacred. So the boy leaves the village. He embarks on this quest for vengeance. He vows to return and avenge his father, kill the one who killed his father, and rescue his mother. Later on, you see the young boy has now become a man, very savage man. He is a berserker, and I will talk about those things in a few moments. Some what we consider like truths or lies. And yes, it's all about the quest of that young man in is looking for revenge, trying to right a wrong. And that's pretty much it. It's a pretty straightforward story. There will be a lot of other things. There will be plot twists. There's going to be a bit of romance. There are going to be mysteries. And I want to stop right there when it comes to the story to avoid spoilers, because for those of you that have not watched the film, I highly recommend that you watch it. Now let's go deeper into how this is related to low magic pseudo-historical settings. And what I mean by that is that in my understanding, when I run a pseudo-historical setting of low magic, I want to recreate a situation that you would expect to see in history, but it's not real. It doesn't respect some courses of action, historical courses, but it takes, in general, it takes most of what we consider to be historically accurate. And when it comes to low magic, it's not as flashy as a high fantasy setting where magic is so common for everyone to use. Magic is very mysterious, it happens rarely, and sometimes maybe you are not really sure if magic actually took place or manifested in some way. Okay, in the case of the Northman, I think it's great that they put so much importance in the more positive side of traditions and the bloodlines, specifically continuing perpetuating the family values and the family itself, that is reproduction. In current times, there is an agenda for controlling the population. The tyrants of the world do this throughout history even if they are not the same. Although the Plantagenet bloodline, I'm going to put a link in the description to a video that will tell you about the Plantagenet bloodline. It's an evil bloodline that pretty much all of the different presidents, prime ministers, the so-called royal houses, they belong to that bloodline. They are quite evil. They are diabolical. So I'm going to put a link in the description to that. And the Northman expresses that tradition, wish, hope of continuing a good, a pure bloodline. So what do I mean by this? I've talked about this in other videos, that you should look, in my opinion, for someone that is compatible with you structurally and spiritually. If you're a man, you're looking for a woman that could be like your opposite. You do not have to be completely the same. That is, do not get tricked into, oh, that woman or that man has a different color of hair or eyes. Or, for example, in the case of my family, we come from, we descend from people that are structurally similar, but they have different color of hair and eyes. And so my relatives and I, we have exhibited traits throughout the history of the family, with different colors of eyes, of the hair color. There are different shades of our skin tone as well. Some are really white, some others are a bit more, what would you say, like swarthy or dusky. But like I said, I think it's very important that you are physically compatible. And in some cases, I think this is very important. You need to find out if, for example, if you are Rh positive, you need to look for someone that is also Rh positive. Because if you have children with someone who is Rh negative and you are Rh positive, let's say that you are an Rh positive guy, and you get an Rh negative woman pregnant, her antibodies are going to detect your seed as a sort of pathogen, like an infection or a disease, and it's going to try to kill the baby. And that's how many babies are born with different genetic problems, that is chronic physical and mental problems. Sometimes they are deformed. Sometimes they are not even born at all. So it's a very risky thing. You need to look for someone who is, if you are Rh negative, look for someone who is also Rh negative. If you are Rh positive, look for someone that is Rh positive. There's a few cases in which the baby comes out healthy, but I think those cases are extremely rare. And so in the Northman, they actually relate this sort of like continuing your bloodline to Yggdrasil. I really like the imagery of the tree of life. And remember, these mysteries are approached in different ways in all sorts of traditions. I think it also expresses reincarnation. For example, if you study the Germanic mysteries, the Norse mysteries, the Kabbalah from the Hebrew traditions, if you study the sutras, you will see that there is the concept of reincarnation, but only through your bloodline, through your descendants. That is, if you want to have a chance at reincarnating, because, like I said, those are mysteries. There is the possibility that you have been lied to, that paradise and hell, they are somewhat different in, let's put it, objectively speaking, although you cannot verify those things because they are outside the realm of matter. They are more like quantum physics sort of things. They are very difficult to explain. And every now and then you have these pseudo-scientists that they are not teaching science, they are teaching a sort of religion. And they try to explain everything with things like the Big Bang, but who created the Big Bang? Are we all just like some sort of accident, some random thing that happened? What was before the Big Bang? So, like I said, it's pointless to try to explain that scientifically because science is for the realm, the material realm. This is some other thing. So, like I said, the concept of reincarnation, you are supposed to reincarnate through your perhaps great grandsons or great granddaughters. So it's very important to keep a certain, like I said, a healthy or a pure bloodline, physically and spiritually speaking. And you can see this in current times. You see so many people that have all sorts of problems, and this I think the video could get shadow banned or taken down if I say this word. Let's call them duck ors, the ducks. Let's call them the ducks. The ducks tell you, oh, I don't know why that person has this sort of disease or problem, or why they had problems during childbirth. I don't know. And usually it's because of that lack of compatibility, speaking in a physical sense. But yeah, the mysteries are quite deep. Maybe it's also related to spirituality. So when it comes to a role-playing game, if you are playing, like I said, perhaps some sort of Norse tribes or Germanic tribes, sort of in that sort of setting, maybe because there are some games that actually handle the generational aspect, that your characters have children. This is a completely different example, but for example, in Mutant Epoch, you can actually play as the children of two of the characters. So there are different role-playing games that you combine two characters, perhaps a non-player character and a player character, or two player characters or two non-player characters, and they give birth to children. Maybe you could get some bonuses if you have that compatibility, or maybe that they inherit, like in some, yes, like Mutant Epoch or other games, you inherit some of the talents or the traits or the powers of the father and the mother. Maybe the character becomes more powerful than the original, the progenitors. So that's an interesting way of handling things. Now let's talk about the spiritual aspects of the Northman. When it comes to magic, and this has been used in The Lighthouse and The Witch, in those films, there is magic. There are some scenes that look straight out of a sword and sorcery story. Like suddenly you feel as if you're watching Conan or something, but they also present the scenes as if things actually, there's the possibility that things actually occurred in the character's mind. So if you see a character encountering this sort of creature or being, or this sort of magical effect takes place, or one of the characters casts a spell, some things could be attributed to some sort of, yes, like an internal thing, something more akin to an imaginary phenomena. But in other cases, they could be coincidences. For example, maybe you cast a spell to control the weather, and then it happens. But who is to say that is not a coincidence? Because you could say, well, if you actually made it rain, or if you control the wind or something, do it again. But then the caster could say something like, oh well, the circumstances are not right, or I spent all of my energy in that spell and now I need to recover for a week or two, or the spirits are going to get angry if I call upon them again. So it's very difficult to verify that in a realistic way, and that's how the Northman applies perfectly to pseudo-historical low magic settings, because magic is handled so subtly. Just like in real life, maybe someone does something and I don't know, he or she knows astral projection, and they visit this place, and you're thinking, no, you're just like, it's a sort of like a flight of fancy or some imaginary thing. It's not real. But what if that person does that astral flight or trip or journey, and some changes to the body of that person happen? some specific changes related to that journey, or the life of that person takes some turn for the better, or perhaps for the worse if that person messes up something, or like curses in real life, like someone is cursing this guy or this woman, and you could say, oh, that's silly, but then after the curse, the person starts to have money problems, health problems, like this stream or some sort of miasma or current or vibe of bad luck. Like the entire world is falling upon that person and everything seems to be going downhill. But like I said, it could be a coincidence. So the Northman handles that ambiguity quite well. You see these scenes in the trailer. For example, there is this part where a Valkyrie appears, but you do not know if the all of this, like the phenomena, is happening inside of the mind of the characters. Maybe there is no objective reality to what is happening, but then some things that happen in those imaginary scenes, so to speak, they have an effect in reality. But there is always that chance that, well, maybe that character wasn't communicating with spirits and he actually talked to this other character before, and that's how that character knows so much. Or maybe like that character was a bit delusional or having some sort of like delirium because of his or her physical condition, and he wasn't actually communicating with some higher being. He, like I said, it's something related to his physical condition, the more like related to the body fluids more than anything, or the brain activity, rather than some sort of connection with other planes of existence. So the Northman is great when it comes to representing that, and you can take that and apply it to pseudo-historical low fantasy settings with magic that the character casts a spell, and this thing happens. Maybe the enemy gets some negative modifiers, but you could think, well, maybe the enemy didn't eat right that day, or maybe they were quite tired from a long journey, so it's not necessarily related to the spell, and you can handle things like, did it actually happen? Is magic real in that setting, or is it not? Now, I really loved the scene where the berserkers were being awakened to battle. Their battle spirits were called forth, and they became more beasts than men. There are some myths and legends that are very interesting throughout different parts of the world. In all sorts of places, even here in Mexico, of course, we have these people that assumed the shapes of animals. I don't think, or rather, well, depends on who. According to certain experiences and occult circles, it's rather a densification of what you would call the etheric fluid, a sort of subtle energy similar to what is handled in Eastern traditions such as Ki and Jin and Shen and all of that. So it's a way of deforming your etheric body to create this sort of cloak in the shape of an animal, or carrying out some sort of astral projection in the shape of an animal. There is this story about this warrior, Bodvar Vyarki. Supposedly he was in the middle of a battle, and instead of going out to fight, he got into this tent and entered this sort of trance, and suddenly this huge bear started to tear the enemies to pieces. So supposedly he projected his spirit outwardly and assumed this bear form, a berserker. But like I said, there are many versions and myths. And it appears that the practice is quite risky. In one of my October videos, I talked about this scary story of what we would call in Spanish bruja, or dark sorceress, perhaps, that projected herself in the shape of an animal, but whatever happened to the animal, if you attacked that animal shape with a metal weapon, that could kill you. Eventually, that woman got killed because a man attacked that lycanthropic appearance or manifestation with his saber, and the woman died from an injury to the head. That is what happened to her astral. No, it was the etheric body. What happened to the etheric body happened to the physical body. So the Northman handles those sorts of situations. When it comes to berserkers, they you do not see the Northman changing shape, but he becomes really savage in battle. So you could say that he assumed this mantle of animal power, like a bestial power. And there's a lot of, like I said, disinformation when it comes to those shape-changing abilities. There are those that almost are completely almost convinced that you actually change shape. For me, it seems a bit impossible. Well, I'm someone of I have an open mind, but in most cases, I would say that's pretty much impossible. Maybe, who knows? Maybe there is someone who achieved some sort of thing. I don't know. I don't think so. And there are some others that say no, the Nordic and Germanic warriors, they didn't have the capacity to become almost invincible in battle. They didn't have the just the ability that is shown in myth and legend and fiction of taking blows and cuts and all of that to the body and without dying and all of that. But usually those that want to convince you that those sort of berserker fury moments do not exist, they are low testosterone men. Just take a look at them. In my personal experience, there have been some moments in my life where I should have broken some of my own bones when it comes to doing certain feats and in physical confrontations. But I was so enraged that yes, I was pretty much unharmed. And it's funny, there is really some mystery to it. For example, I have managed to stop a metal tube with my arm, but in other moments, I have, for example, when it was really rainy a long time ago when I was a teenager, I tripped and I fell on a piece of metal and got a really nasty cut. But like I said, in those moments of fury, suddenly you feel a bit invincible. So there's more to it, in my opinion. There are some pretty amazing moments. Okay. In the Northman, I also like it how they also keep a moral ambiguity. Oh, and before we jump into that, yes, if you wanted to introduce Berserker Fury in low fantasy, pseudo-historical settings, handle it like that, like I told you. Maybe in some moments, in moments of normalcy or everyday activities, your character is quite fragile when exploring some settings, some places, carrying out different feats. But once he or she has some sort of excuse to enter that wild fury, maybe the rules could be modified a bit to represent that, giving some bonuses to your stamina or strength, depending on the system. Now, going forward rather, when it comes to the moral ambiguity that I was telling you, at first everything seems so clear cut when it comes to good and evil, but later on, it seems that some characters had different motives, different plans all along, different reasons as to why they did this or that. But at the same time, the characters that are communicating these secrets or revelations, they are not exactly paragons or the best examples of being honest or truthful. So you never know if they are telling the truth or if they are just carrying out some sort of smearing campaign upon the characters that you thought that were the good guys and they're actually the bad guys, or vice versa. You think that this character is a bad guy and he's actually the good guy, but you never get a confirmation. And I think that's great for pseudo-historical low fantasy settings in role-playing games, especially if you do not have an alignment system. If you decided to discard alignment or handle it in a different way, you can handle those heroes and villains as characters that you, by the end, you truly do not know if they are actually heroes or villains. I think that a lot of people that have been indoctrinated thanks to yes, mainstream education, the educational institutions, religion, what the government tells you is right or wrong. Like the government tells you, oh, don't kill, but they are always killing people. Anything related to different intelligence agencies, all of that mental control or social programming, social engineering. A lot of people that are still asleep under that control, they will find some scenes in the Northman quite horrifying. But that's just the way someone protects his own people, his own honor. Like the example of Cuchulainn. In that case, it was a Celtic mythology that I told you that a friend of mine thought that Cuchulainn was somewhat of a psychopath because he saw this warrior infiltrating his land and he just murdered that guy, no questions. He didn't try to reach a peaceful solution. If you are a warrior and you are invading someone else's land and you are not asking permission, you're going to get killed. So that's what Cuchulainn did, and he is no psychopath in my opinion. He was protecting his land. He didn't know what that stranger was going to do in his land, or who he was going to hurt or potentially kill, or what he was going to steal. And so diplomacy and respect is very important. Nowadays, we do not have that. It's very easy for people to just be rude to each other. In different times, in medieval times or even the Wild West, where duels were quite common. In the Wild West, especially, if you insulted someone, and there was a pretty good chance that you could end up getting killed or shot. But because in current times, the different governments and religions, they want people to be docile, controlled. They do not care about justice. They just want people to do not make too much of a racket or noise. They want them to keep on producing money, to serve them in different ways. So they are not looking for justice. And most things can be settled with just money or some time in prison. I saw a very tragic case in the Coffee House Crime Channel about this in South Africa. This blonde woman, she went into this horrible neighborhood. She was with a friend and she didn't want her friend to go back to the neighborhood pretty late at night. And they were in a car and they got ambushed by a gang and they pretty much did some very nasty things to her. I'm sure you can imagine what. And she ended up being killed. And her friend, they almost killed him with bricks. They pretty much smashed him, almost broke his skull. I think there were some fractures, injuries, but he managed to survive. And the idiots that did that, the four imbeciles, they only got to spend a bit of time in jail. Instead, compared to not only taking a human life and dishonoring her in such a way, or insulting her honor rather, and what they did to this other man, in a world of true virtue and justice, they would have given them the breaking wheel treatment. That's what they deserve. They almost killed him with bricks. That's the only satisfaction in my opinion. And I'm sure that that man, if he still has the balls, he will have accepted that punishment. That is himself, him being the sorry, remember that Spanish is my main language. He should have been the executioner. He should have been allowed to kill them with bricks, in my opinion. So the Northman has a sort of more what some would consider savage justice. But it's not savage, it's just the nature of the human being. Looking for that true justice, I would say. I was also a bit hesitant of watching the movie. I had heard that it was pretty slow. I like slow films, but some films do get a bit too slow. And those films that are too, like I said, not fast enough for my taste, I watch them as a sort of meditation exercise. For example, the film Stalker, that's pretty slow movie. You could say that it's brilliant from a cinematographic angle, but I wouldn't watch it for the entertainment value. I would watch it to feel like that sort of meditation state, to discover some truths about myself or the world. It's more like looking at an art piece, like looking at a painting or a sculpture. You do not watch that for simple entertainment or yes, more immediate enjoyment. It's something to be processed at a deeper level. But the Northman, I don't feel it's actually like that. There are some deep moments, like I said, all of that beautiful imagery of the other world, of Yggdrasil, the Valkyrie, the gates to Valhalla, Odin, the crows of Odin, Hugin and Munin. All of that, and you will see those elements making an appearance in the film. And I think you will enjoy that, but the pacing of some more mellow, perhaps even melancholic moments and action, I think it's excellent. You have like, a moment of calm, and then you have these weird rituals, and then there is battle, and then there is this moment of calm, weird rituals, battle, and it kind of like repeats like that, and I really like that pace. The rituals represent a sort of middle ground between like the calm before the storm, and the storm being the battle scenes. So there are many elements that you can take from that film and apply them to your pseudo-historical low fantasy setting, even if it's related to the way that they carried out justice. In the case of the Northman, like I said, it's justice at a more individual, personal level. You shouldn't sacrifice an individual, just to satisfy the masses, or an artificial sense of justice, something too divorced from natural justice, I would say. So I highly recommend that you watch The Northman and that you apply the lessons of The Northman in your pseudo-historical low magic campaigns. There is much to learn from The Northman, and like I said, you see the good and the bad of those sorts of societies. Even if you are not playing a game that features Norse or Germanic tribes, you could apply the same principles, although with slight modifications according to the culture. For example, if you wanted to play a game featuring the Celts, I think it would be a bit less melancholy and more focus on interaction with the beings of the Fae, perhaps some more Celtic riddles, even some comedy. The Celts were, even though they moved in some very dark environments and with some savage wars, they also, I've always felt, based on history and mythology, that they have this sort of inner laughter to them, like they are enjoying things quite a bit. And in the case of Norse and the Germanic traditions, they feel a bit more fatalistic. So yes, just take the teachings of the Northman and apply them to different cultures to suit the needs of your campaign. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. If you have watched The Northman, I would like to know what you thought about the movie. Did you enjoy the movie? Did you think that it was quite lacking in some ways? Let me know in the comment section. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending right through RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.